Welcome back everyone, another mid-2020 review, and this time we're talking about a phone that we actually haven't talked about in a while. And that specific phone is the original iPhone SE. Now the newer iPhone SE, I've been talking about a ton, the iPhone SE 2020. I love that phone, I talked about the SE2 a lot. And I think the original iPhone SE is one of my favorite phones ever. And I'll be honest, some things have actually changed about this. We've gotten the successor, we've gotten software updates, and we're kind of in this middle ground of whether it's going to be getting the next software version or not, and I'll discuss it all in this video. Now if you want a full-on review, this is not a full review, this is just like an updated one. You can watch the video I dropped early on this year, so you can just type in iPhone SE in 2020 and my video will probably be one of the first ones. You can watch it there. Now price wise, this phone has actually fluctuated quite a bit. So here's the weird thing, on eBay you can pick up these things for like less than $70, sometimes more than $80. So you can actually pick one of these things up for fairly cheap, and for a pretty decently performing phone, that's pretty impressive. Now on Amazon, these things are still selling for about like $120-ish, so I'll find the cheapest one in Amazon and link it down below if you want to get them from there. Now looking on the front, we still have that 4-inch IPS panel. I don't know why I always have to say like it still has it, as if it's going to change or anything like that, but it's 640p and it's not a bad panel. I don't think I've ever said it was an ugly panel, but it is a little bit smaller, so the pixels, for me personally, the way I see it, like the pixels aren't really like spread out as much, so it looks like a little bit higher resolution than what it is, which is nice. You still have a home button on the front and quite a bit of bezel. Again, this is a smaller phone and it has, a lot of bezel, so you just kind of have to keep that in mind. But I don't think it's that big of a deal. A lot of people like this phone because of the size, so you have to remember that. You have the lightning port on the bottom, and on the back, aluminum back side with like glass on the top and bottom, which is something I really like, and hopefully Apple does bring this back. I'd rather have this than kind of what we have now. I don't know, maybe it's like whatever, and a single camera setup, which is cool. So nothing too crazy. I mean, again, it's like whatever, but for a phone that came out in 2016 that the design actually stemmed from back in like 2012, it still feels like a very, very good phone in my opinion. Still feels extremely premium, and it doesn't really feel cheap at all, which is really cool. Now, software wise, this is where things are a little bit interesting. So this thing started off with iOS 9. Right now it's on like iOS 13.5.1. I don't know when we're getting the next version of software. But here's the thing, okay, iOS 14 is coming out in a couple of days, and I really don't know if iOS 14 is coming out on this thing. I will, eventually make an updated review if it does get iOS 14, but I think it's a pretty interesting thing. There's reasons why it will get it, there's reasons why it won't. A lot of the leaks, I will say more so, have been pointing to the fact that it'll probably end up getting iOS 14, which I hope so. I think that would be really cool. But again, we're just gonna have to wait and see. So in my opinion, it'll probably get it, and software has been pretty good in it too. I haven't had like too many issues with it in terms of upgrading and bugs and stuff like that. It's been a very smooth experience overall. Moving on to the performance, this thing has that Apple A9 chip, a dual-core CPU, and several different models of this phone with 2 gigs of RAM each, which is really cool. So performance-wise, it's always been pretty decent. It's definitely not the fastest thing in the world, but it's really, really good. And I really like the way this thing feels when I'm just messing around with it, when I'm, just doing it for a video. Even when I was filming this video, like, it was a really good experience, and I never had issues with it, which is a huge highlight. Again, is it a deal breaker if you do have issues, whatever? No, it's not, but it's still a really cool thing, and I really do like the performance on this thing for sure. So it definitely gets a thumbs up in my books. Moving on to the cameras, this thing has a 12 megapixel camera on the back, single camera. You can do 4K at 30, which is really cool, but really outside of that, you cannot do 4K at 60. You don't have a telephoto or ultra-wide sensor, so keep that in mind. But that's probably one of the only limiting factors of this camera. It's not a bad camera. I think the quality is pretty decent, and if you actually go and take your time, taking photos outside in good lighting, I'm sure you'll get really, really decent photos out of this thing even still. So a 1.2 megapixel front-facing camera, and it's definitely not the best, but again, if you're in good lighting, you can probably make it work. You're probably gonna mostly use it for Snapchats and like FaceTime calls anyway, so it's really not that big of a deal, but it is what it is. And it also has a 1624 mAh battery. Now mine is about at like that 90% degradation rate when it comes down to the battery size, so that is one thing to keep in mind. It was about like 90 to 100% I think early on this year if I recall, so it went down a little bit. Not a big deal at all, but it is something to consider at the end of the day. So battery life has always been pretty good on my iPhone SE too, which is really nice. So to kind of sum up the video and to answer the question, should you pick up the iPhone SE in 2020, at least in the middle of 2020, dude, I'll be real, dude, 100% yes. This phone is still completely worth it in my opinion. Now I would probably tell you to wait until WWDC and see if this phone gets iOS 14. If it does, then 100% get it. Even if it doesn't, it's still going to get security updates for a little while too. So I would say go for it. I think it's completely worth it, but if you can spend a little bit more money, getting a phone like an iPhone 8 or even an iPhone SE 2020 would definitely keep you in the loop for a longer period of time, and it'll definitely make sense if you go and upgrade to the iPhone SE 2, because that is a better phone than this one in my opinion. So that's really pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. All those things are linked down below. I really appreciate if you guys would check it out. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.